are going to go over Hyperdocs using Google Apps. My name is Stephanie Sandino, and I wish I knew how to, there we go, go to my next slide. I was using Google Meet all of last year, so when I go to Zoom, I feel like I'm a little lost, but I think I'll be okay. So again, a big thank you to CMSPEW, sending all our love all the way from SoCal. I don't know if we have any out-of-staters in here. Usually when we have virtual workshops, we round up some people from out of state. So those of you tuning in from any other place other than Cali, we are sending our love to you all. And of course, me being from SoCal, as I'm sure most of the participants, hello everybody, and a big wave to everybody. So thank you for having me. Thank you for coming to learn with us and spending your morning, Saturday morning on a summer vacation to continue to forward your practice. All right, so a little bit about me. Scott mentioned I am from Chino Valley Unified School District. I used to be a co-host for the Shape America podcast. New and exciting things coming soon. I am also an EPEW committee member. We are the K-8 elementary physical education workshop. Some of you may have gone to our workshop about a week ago. We were also virtually this year and crossing our fingers for an in-person workshop next year, as I'm sure all of you are. So stay tuned for our EPEW announcements. I'm also an HPEP teacher leader. We are a collaborative health and physical education collaborative from up north, based up north, but we do a lot of PDs mainly around California, both NorCal and SoCal. And I'm also an SB chat moderator. We took a little break last year as everybody felt like we had a lot of things piled up on our plates. So we took a momentary lapse just so that we can regroup and hopefully start again this upcoming year. It's a Twitter chat that we put on every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, and various topics. It's not just elementary physical education. It could apply to you as a middle school, a physical education teacher, high school, so on and so forth. So really good chat to be a part of and to be able to speak with other educators from around the world. So lots of great topics that get you thinking, spark some ideas. All right, so here we go, our learning targets for today. What is a Hyperdoc? Examples from my distance learning school year. So I spent my whole school year last year on a computer. I did not get to see my students at all. In fact, I didn't get to see most of my Townsend students. I was thrown into a distance learning pool where I got all 7 middle school sites. So I taught students from all over, and the whole time we were on the computer. So I definitely learned a lot. It was quite a bit last year, but I learned a lot, and I did have some takeaways that I want to share with you today. And of course, it wouldn't be, I guess, a learning experience if there wasn't any hands-on portion to this. So I'm going to get you guys going a little bit at the end with some hands-on experience with a template that I have created for that I have for you all, so that you can get some practice in. And I don't know about you, but for me, the way I learn is if I get my hands dirty. So if I can get started on something, even if it's just for 10 minutes, get my ideas down, and then I can refine it later, that's a pretty good start for me. So hopefully this is a good learning experience, and you'll be able to get at least an idea down, and then later on you can come back to it and finish it off and maybe even use it for your classrooms this year. All right, so I'm going to start off with a little bit of interaction here with the KWL chart. So I'm going to be sending a link into the chat box, and it's going to send you to a hopefully edited version of a Jamboard. And for some of you, it'll be your first time using a Jamboard. For some of you, it'll be your umpteenth time using a Jamboard. So we're going to learn about this together if it's your first time. And those of you that are, I hope that went through okay. If not, then I will send it over again. Did it go through okay, Scott? Is it a
Yeah,
clickable
it
link?
looks great, Stephanie. Thank you.
Okay,
Actually, in the chat, it looks like some of it is a link and all of it looks like it's just text.
okay. So give me a second here.
Oh yeah, it looks like the second half's not underlined.
Looks like I got signed out of my account. That's always nice. All right. Okay, so here we go again. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to do this. And hopefully it's a better link.
Yes, that's much better.
Yes, we've got touchdown. Awesome. Okay, so it's going to send you to a Jamboard. And let me move the chat out of the way so I can see a little bit better here. Awesome. All right, now on this Jamboard, you should be able to edit. And on the left-hand side, you're going to see some tools. Really, the only tool you need to know right now is the sticky note tool. So we're going to go over 2 columns right now. What I know about Hyperdocs using Google Apps. You can feel free to say nothing at all because you might not know anything. You might know some. So you're like, I know a little bit about it. And then what you want to know going into this presentation. So if you just grab your sticky note, you can pick a color, you can type in what you need to type in, and then just move your sticky note into the correct column. Just be mindful that someone might also have another sticky note. So don't cover their answer or anything, just kind of move it to an open space. Perfect. I'm seeing the sticky notes. So we're going to begin with what I know, and it's okay to not know anything at all. That's sometimes where our students meet us. They might not know anything about the game of cricket, and that's all right. It is our job to give them a little experience and show them the transfer of skills and where they are and where they want to go, right? And then want to know, okay, how to do it, how to use this when we go back to in person. Very cool. How to make one, absolutely. Seeing examples, cool. I love it. And if you're joining us from a phone, feel free to write. Oh, what happened there? That was weird. All my Post-its are gone. Are they gone for all of you? If you're joining from a phone, you can type in your answers in the chat box. I don't want to exclude you. I know it can be a little bit more difficult to chime in from a phone with the Jamboard. So if you want to drop it in the chat box, what you know and what you want to know, awesome. How to use it at school, very cool. All right, and at the end, we're going to come back to this and we're going to fill out the last column with what you've learned so far. Hopefully, I've done my job and have given you a nugget or two on Hyperdocs. All right, maybe 30 more seconds to let others fill in their sticky notes, and then I'll get going back to my presentation. 10 more seconds. That was so weird. All of them disappeared all at the same time. 3 more seconds. 2 and 1. Awesome. All right. So you'll still have access to that. So maybe keep it up on a different tab. That way it's easy for you to get back to at the end of the session. Perfect. All right. I'm going to keep pushing forward here with our. That's right. I can't click on that because I hyperlinked it. So I'm going to have to get out. All right, so here we go. I kind of wanted to show you what I do or what I did with my students during distance learning. So just as I would in an in-person class with my what, why, how whiteboard, I also used it in my classes themselves. So instead of the whiteboard, obviously my Google Slides were my whiteboard. I would do my what, why, how. So I kind of wanted to show you a little bit of, you know, how I manage my classes and what kind of content I put into them, what my slides look like. So I always had a what slide So what are we learning? So today we happen to be learning about a hyperdoc, and a hyperdoc is a digital document that is transformative. So it's very versatile. Just because you have a hyperdoc based on a heart rate, it doesn't mean you can't transform it into something dealing with mindfulness. So it's very versatile. It's interactive. Students are thrown into a document with a lot of different multimedia. It could be anything from an audio clip from a podcast. It could be a video. It could be a picture. It could be a link sending them to a Flipgrid. It could be a link sending them to a Google form. So it's very interactive and it's personalized. So if you have students with certain needs, an English language learner, a SPED student, you can definitely personalize it to that particular student. I know in my experience, I did a lot of communication back and forth with my APE teacher. I had a student in a wheelchair for distance learning. So I had to do a lot of personalization with my Google Forms so that it met the needs for that student. It's engaging, right? So they're engaging with multiple forms of media, just like the interactivity part. And it's helpful in facilitating student creativity and collaboration. So really they're allowed to be as creative as they can, and as you kind of create your hyperdoc to be. And you're able to include some collaboration within, whether you have them paired up, you have them interacting on a Jamboard like I just did, or some type of collaboration on Flipgrid. Sky's the limit here. Now, why are we learning this? Why is this so important? And I got this from an image I saw from a colleague on Twitter, Jeffco Ed Tech. So it allows you to help, or it allows you to kind of plan or build a unit or a lesson ahead of time. It kind of gives you that thinking space where like, okay, so, what student outcome am I focusing on here? Where am I going with it? What do I want them to learn? What am I assessing them on? Okay, so it makes you kind of think of the whole picture as you're building this hyperdoc or multiple hyperdocs, because one hyperdoc could just be one lesson, right? But if you build a series of hyperdocs, then it kind of allows you to think about the whole picture, which is really nice when it comes to our practice. It helps you think about how you can engage them, how they can explore within your hyperdoc, how they can explain something that they've learned, apply something that they've learned, then reflect on what they've learned, maybe share and extend. Maybe you have a student that needs a little bit more challenge. So you allow for that to happen in your hyperdoc by having a space where they can extend their answers or extend what they've learned. It encourages independence because every student works on it on their own, at their own pace. It's versatile, as I mentioned before. You integrate a lot of digital media, pictures, something to read, an article, a podcast, something to listen to, a video to watch. And as I did mention, students can work at their own pace. It allows for you to differentiate, and it allows for student autonomy within your hyperdocs. Again, you can differentiate between English language learners. You can differentiate between maybe your SPED students, or someone that just needs a little bit more of a challenge, or maybe someone that needs to work at their own pace, might be a little bit slower than the rest of the class, and that's okay. You can differentiate within these hyperdocs, and it allows for you to flip your instruction to maximize those minutes. I don't know about you all, but I'm not going to just throw away the hundreds of hours I just spent using or creating all of my Google Slides and creating all of my distance learning content. I am definitely looking forward to adding some of that technology into my school year this year, continuing with the Google Classroom, continuing with some of the projects that I did create this year, because I think it was worthwhile, and I think the students really did have a good experience. So I want to keep carrying that forward into this upcoming school year. I don't want to throw away everything that I created. It's just heartbreaking, and I don't want to do that. All right, and just I'm going to highlight some of these here so that we can get going onto the examples. So it kind of has a compare and contrast on what a hyperdoc is and what a hyperdoc is not. And you will have access to my slides, so you can always come back to this slide and read through it a little bit more carefully. But something that I really like about hyperdocs is that it gives students the opportunity to be creative and show what they know. And that's really cool for me. And it allows for reflection. I'm a huge reflective person. I love to reflect every day. In fact, I write in my little teacher planner on what happened that day, what was going on, what I needed to work on, what didn't work, what did work. A student that I needed to touch base with needs a little bit more TLC. So I do reflect every day. I spend about 15 minutes every day writing in my teacher planner during the school year, of course. And I just kind of I brain dump basically. So being reflective is something I try to showcase to my students, and I kind of want to know where they're at, where their head's at. So that reflection process in hyperdocs is pretty cool too. All right, so let's move on to my examples. So this is the very first hyperdoc I actually made. And in fact, it wasn't this year. I was in a session just like you all right now. I was learning about hyperdocs, and Christine, she actually gave us a template, and this is the idea that I had put down on that session. And I didn't finish it that particular day, but I did go back and make it colorful, put the logos, put the pictures in, put the hyperlinks, and I created a hyperdoc. And if it wasn't for that session getting me started on this, I don't think I would have finished it. So I kind of want to give you the same experience today. And if you click on these hyperlinks, it's going to take you to who Christine is, her social media account, but also the actual template itself. So this is an example of just one hyperdoc, and this one's really specific because it starts off with a watch square, so bottom left. And this is the particular platform that I used was Google Apps, in particular Google Docs. All right, so I kind of created this with the template she gave us. I added hyperlinks to the pictures. I wanted the kids just to start off by watching what the introduction to sports stacking was. And then it kind of moves on to something a little bit more deeper. So what are the tips? I had them read an article. And then they kind of had a lesson on what the 3-3-3 stack was. And then there was an explanation part where they had to actually teach a classmate or a family member the rules of cup stacking. They had to, again, do a little bit of reading on the benefits of what cup stacking can do for them and their bodies, reflect on it, wonder about it. So again, I'm taking them through this process, this thinking process through various platforms or medias. So pictures, articles that I found off of the sports stacking website, and videos to teach them about the 3-6-3. Then they had to teach someone how to do the 3-6-3. Then they had to create a how-to guide on the 3-3-3 stack or the 3-6-3 stack. So there's a little bit of autonomy there. Which one did they want to choose? They could do a how-to guide on Canva or on Google Slides. If they had another idea on how to create a how-to guide, let's say they're like, oh, Miss Sandino, can I just do a video as a how-to guide? Sure, awesome. There's that autonomy there. The level up, so that extension piece or that challenge piece was introduction to double sport stacking. So 2 people at the same time, watch and try. And then the think part at the end was something that they thought their partner could have done better or they could have done better. So again, a little part of SEL reflection there. So that's just one example. I'm going to give you the same exact template, and you're going to start off with an idea, a question. How do you successfully stack a 3-3-3 and a 3-6-3 just happens to be my question. Yours could be any topic you would want to try. Are you going to finish it today? Probably not, but it's all right. At least you get that idea there. And then next week, or when you get started with school, you come back to it. Maybe you have an even better idea, you switch it up, or you extend and you continue to build your first Hyperdoc, which is kind of cool. I'm a nerd, I know. All right. So here's my next one. This is an example of a mindfulness Hyperdoc. This is also using Google Document. So it's kind of like a tic-tac-toe. I did not create this. I got a lot of ideas from my Twitter colleagues, and in specific, Becky and Mark Fulmer's website, cbhpe.org. So a lot of ideas were from my colleagues that saved my behind this school year. If it wasn't for the Twitter community, I don't know how I would have done it this school year. It was crazy. So in this particular one, I will click on it so it gets a little bit bigger. Again, it's a Google Doc. So I pushed this out through Google Classroom. I assigned each student their own copy, so they were able to mark it up because it is a little bit of a tic-tac-toe. They picked 3 mindfulness videos that they were going to engage with, whether it was vertically, horizontally, or diagonally. They would obviously highlight which boxes they did and then do the reflection questions according to the videos that they completed. So this is a little bit more of a simplified version of a Hyperdoc in comparison to the other cup stacking one, but it's another idea. If you want to start small, if you want to just kind of get your feet wet with hyperdocking, this is just a small thing that you can do. Add those links on there, have them engage with those links, and then maybe even a reflection process. Very simplified version of a Hyperdoc, I would say. Another one that I completed this year was my target heart rate zones lab. This one's a little bit more complex in which the level that they had to engage in, and a lot of it was done in my class. I got this from the cbhpe.org, Mark and Becky Fulmer's website, as I mentioned before. The person that came up with it, Mari, she was awesome enough to let me share this out with all of you, as well as the other examples that you see. Taylor's was the mindfulness tic-tac-toe. So for this one, I actually used a Google Doc, or I'm sorry, a Google Slide. So a little bit different. I use a different app. You can use it with documents. You can use it with the slides. The sky's the limit on how you create your Hyperdoc, so long as students are able to click on links and maybe even engage within the document itself. So for this one, students were using the heart rate zone viewer, which is included in the link that you will all have access to, in which they are able to find their age and they're able to find their maximum, vigorous, moderate, light activity level, and very light activity level heart rate range. So they were able to calculate this on their own with the help of the heart rate zone viewer. I challenged some of my students, if they were more mathematically inclined, I was like, okay, do the multiplication. I taught them how to do that. If some kids struggled, this heart rate zone viewer that's also attached to this particular project, it basically gives them the answer, in which case it's just, okay, what age am I? What range am I looking for? Am I looking for 90 to 100% maximum heart rate? Okay, so I go to that and, oh, there it is. There's my heart rate number. So I plug it in. So I kind of, I have students all over the place. I didn't know a lot of my students this year because they came from different schools. So I had that challenge: use the multiplication or use this heart rate zone viewer. If you can't quite figure it out, you need a little bit more help. We did an exercise video in which they took their actual heart rate. I included this 6-second timer, and these are actually clickable. And I know I have this on view only, so you'll have to make your own copy to actually raise these bar graphs. But if this was my own copy, I would be able to click on this and move it up like a bar graph to whatever beats per minute I had as my resting heart rate, exercise heart rate, and recovery heart rate. So it's engaging little bit of math is involved there. It's visually appealing to their eyes. Okay, is my resting heart rate lower than my exercise heart rate? Is it higher? What's going on here? And then that reflection process of how they're explaining their heart rate changed after exercise, after recovery, and then a little bit of get to know for me, my students, what are some examples of things you enjoy that will increase your heart rate? Just so that I get them thinking, okay, what do I actually enjoy? What do I like doing? This was done when they were at home, so I kind of needed a little bit more information, get a little more ideas on my end. So it was kind of a question I threw in there that got them thinking and then gave me some ideas on what I can include in my lessons so that I can kind of grab their attention. Okay, and I think this is the last example that I have before I want to get you all going, but I did a little bit of nutrition this year, and I got this from Coach Donchev, also on Twitter. I included the original tweet, so what she did, and then I kind of tweaked it a little bit. And in class, I showed my class a video about the food groups, about, orange juice, in a carton versus freshly squeezed orange juice, and how that can add, way more extra calories, way more sugar that's added into that carton of orange juice. Talked about a lot of different things. So we had a whole little mini unit on nutrition. And believe it or not, some middle schoolers just are very low in their knowledge of nutrition. And although this may seem really basic, I actually thought that myself as I was trying to think through, like, okay, what am I going to do? I was like, oh, geez, this is something they probably should have learned in K-5, looking back at the standards. But you'd be surprised how challenging this could be to students that, weren't exposed to nutrition in their past grade levels. So we did kind of review all of those things, from food groups to calculating calories, calculating serving sizes. Serving sizes was a big thing for my middle schoolers. They didn't quite understand that, even though the box said, oh, it's only 100 calories, but then they consume more serving size. They're like, oh, I've got to multiply that by like 3. That means it's like 300 calories. So I gave them a little bit of knowledge on nutrition facts label as well, but this is an interactive one where I had these boxes that are outlined right here as I'm clicking through, although they don't, oh, there they are. Those are text boxes in which they were going to build their own healthy meal. So they would type in a protein, they would type in a vegetable. These are all text boxes that I included in there. And then in the plate itself, they would find a picture on Google Images and put it on the platter. So they would show me what their protein is. They would show me what their vegetable is, just for a little bit more added engagement and interactivity on this Hyperdoc. And then lastly, I wanted to focus on moderation. So their reflective question was, why is moderation so important? So this would be a huge text box in which they at least needed to complete 2 sentences. Again, they had the interactive piece of the video during class, and then I let them go independently to search on their own their protein of choice and their vegetable, grain, fruit, dairy of choice. So it was kind of a full circle activity there. All right, so tools to create Hyperdocs. Again, sky's the limit. Things that I've used before, you can create it on a Google document, on a Google slide. You can have students create answers, responses on Canva. You can have them respond to a Flipgrid. Some of my cup stacking ones could have definitely been a response to a Flipgrid. Collaboration, so students collaborating in class using Hyperdocs could be a Jamboard, as we completed one at the beginning. They can collaborate in breakout rooms in a Google Meet or in person. I know a lot of this is distance learning kind of geared towards, but this can definitely be an in-person assignment as well, kind of like a flipped classroom type thing. They can collaborate on a Padlet, tools to connect. So students being able to connect to that Google document by writing their responses, typing their responses. They can connect to a Google slide. They can connect on a Google Meet if you have verbal responses. And to critically think, again, you can use the Google Doc, you can use the Google slide, you can even use a Google form. So if it's a whole lesson, but you want them to respond to a Google form, that's where you want the answers. You can have them do that. You can have them respond on a Flipgrid, as I mentioned before. So these are kind of the different apps that I have been using to create, collaborate, connect, critically think in my class and respond to the Hyperdoc itself. So my timing, it's pretty good. So before we get to this, I wanted to show you something that is a helpful tip when creating a Hyperdoc on a Google slide. So I'm going to give you some playtime after I show you this little tip, just so that you can get started and get thinking about how you can use this in your classroom, what topic you would like to use, and how you can start thinking about it. How are you going to have them watch? What are you going to have them read? What are you going to have them view? How are you going to have them explain, think about, reflect, so on and so forth? How are you going to extend the lesson? All right, so I'm going to go into my Google Drive here. This is my work Google Drive, and you'll notice this is my folder for my mini nutrition. Well, one of my weeks for mini nutrition unit. So you can see here is my Build a Healthy Meal. Why do I have 2 copies of it? Well, one copy is a master copy. That's the copy where I make all of my changes to. And another copy, which I didn't label master copy, I just left it as Build a Healthy Meal. That's the assignment I'm going to push out to my students. So if you notice on the student assignment, you can't click on anything here. There's nothing to mess with. They can't change my directions. They can't, move my Bitmoji or my title. All they can do is click on the actual text boxes that I've created for them. That's all they can do. And of course, they can paste their pictures of their food groups on the plate itself. Same thing with this page. They can't fiddle with anything. All they can do is type their response. I did that for a reason, because students, whether they do it on purpose or they don't do it on purpose, they just don't know what's going on in the Google document itself or the Google slide. They kind of just click around and before you know it, like the whole thing can be erased and you're like, what? How did you even do that? So in order to prevent all of that from happening, I made a master copy and a student copy. Student copy, they can't mess around with anything. This is actually a picture that I made as a background. All of this. How did I do that? Well, I did it on my master copy first. So let me go back here and I'll show you my master copy and how different it is. So master copy, you can mess around with anything. The instructions, the title, the little box here, my Bitmoji, everything is editable, so to speak. So in order for me to make it non-editable, I went to File and Download, and I downloaded it as a JPEG or a PNG. It doesn't matter because you can make it a background. So I downloaded the picture, and let's see if I can do this real quick just to kind of give you an idea. So I'll download it as a JPEG. So it's in my computer, and if I make a new slide here, and I go to background, I can choose that exact image. Go to browse, downloads, perfect, it's right there. Excellent. And now no one can touch anything. It's just a picture. So it's a really neat tip or a really helpful tip that I learned while making Hyperdocs to prevent craziness from happening to my documents with my kiddos. Because they do click around, and sometimes it's on purpose, but sometimes it's an honest accident and they just like erase everything. And they're like, it's gone. I don't know what happened. I just clicked the button and everything's gone. And I'm like, well, okay. So I had to find a way to deal with that situation. And I learned about the master copy and the student copy. So just a helpful tip that I wanted to definitely show you all. All right, so let's get to playing around, huh? I'm going to give you 2 links in the chat box. One of them is going to be my example. So you'll have access to my example, the sports stacking one, just so that you can kind of get an idea of what I did in each of the boxes. And then the other example is, or the other template, I'm sorry, is going to be a blank one. The blank one, you'll have to make a copy so that you can actually edit it. So you can go to File, make a copy of that blank template. And I have them labeled. I have my example and then I have blank template. And I want you to get started on it. Meanwhile, as you're working, I can be here in I guess here for questions, kind of like what I do with my students. I let them go and I'm available for questions to facilitate any group that I need to facilitate. So let me get to my chat box. Hopefully it does it does this okay. And it doesn't do what it did last time. Okay, so you see the 2 examples, or you see the 2 links. My example is just to give you like an idea of how I went about each square. And the blank template, again, you have to make a copy of it to start your topic or your idea. And I'll allow you to get started on some type of an idea so that you can get something going and maybe even started for next school year. But I'll be available for questions here if you have any questions. I can look at the chat box or if you want to raise your hand or anything. But I did want to give you about maybe 10 minutes to get going on an idea for your Hyperdoc. Time to get your hands dirty, everybody. The fun starts here. All right, and there's my timer. Oftentimes I did that with my students. I put on a timer, and when it was done for independent work and I wanted to regroup as a whole class, I would just put in a timer. They'd be ready to go and on to the next one. All right, everybody. So there it was. A little bit of playtime for you all in your creating. I know some of us are all over the place when it comes to creative juices and being on some type of spectrum. Some of us think we're like not creative at all and need a little bit of help. That's why I gave you my example. Some of you can be as creative as you want, right? You're like, oh yeah, I can do this. I can create something. So you've got that blank one and you're like, all right, let's run with it. I like to color code things. I like to be visual. So that's why in my example, you kind of see a lot of colors. You see pictures. It's hyperlinked to sports stacking articles. Could have I added in Flipgrid links? Yes, I could have. So in order to answer, let's say the last purple one, the dark think purple, what is one thing you wish your partner could have done better? Could have I added a little Flipgrid to that? Absolutely. Click on the Flipgrid, that takes them to the Flipgrid. They answer it verbally and visually. So again, the sky's the limit for it. We're going to go back to our KWL chart, and hopefully you've learned a nugget or 2 from this session that you can put down on that Jamboard. So I'm going to copy and paste that same Jamboard link in the chat box. And we're going to go back to it. Maybe you already have it up on a different tab, so feel free to go to that tab that you have open and get to that Jamboard with the sticky note. There it is in the chat box. I'm going to open it up too. So we're focusing on the last column, what you've learned today. Maybe it was the tip about the student copy and the master copy. Maybe it was what you could include in a Hyperdoc, everything from different types of multimedia to different ways of thinking and expressing their responses. Okay, nice. We got the master copy and the student copy as something you've learned. Good. That was super helpful for me when I learned it. True game changer. Okay, how to put in a link. Yep, definitely. If anybody needs help putting in a link, I know I had that question in the chat box. If I couldn't or was unable to answer it via chat box and you'd like to visually see it, just let me know. I can quickly do that as a quick demo on how to add in a link into your Hyperdoc. Awesome. And you can also put in what you've learned in the chat box for those of you using a phone, possibly. If you're tuning in from your cell phone, you can also put it in the chat box, no worries. Okay. Got some wheels turning here. I like it, definitely. Awesome. So feel free to continue putting in those sticky notes in the Jamboard if you'd like. Maybe this is the first time using Jamboard and you kind of want to, check out the tools on the left. It's a really useful collaboration tool that I used this year with my students to know where they were or where they're at with a certain topic. I used it for the riots that happened at the Capitol. And if anybody needed or felt like they needed to take something off their chest about what had happened, because I knew they were going to be on social media, they were going to bring it up during my class. So I made one just to kind of let them get it off their chest. And I said, hey, listen, if there's something that, you need to get off your chest, use this Jamboard. I will look at it during class, after class, and I'll respond to you. So I used it for a variety of different things and ways in my class. And I just thought it was a useful tool that I also wanted to show you because, again, all of the work we put in last year shouldn't have been for nothing. We should definitely still carry it on into this year. Things that work, things that you really liked. Jamboard is one of those things. Google Classroom was one of those things for me. Some of the projects that I created that I showed or shared with you today, some of those things I don't want to let go, and I want to continue going forward with them and implement them in my classroom too. All right, let me go back to my slideshow here. And my last slide is just dedicated to contact information. So any way you want to get a hold of me, I am definitely most often on Twitter. So if you follow me and shoot me a DM, a direct message, I will definitely get back to it. I'm also available with my Gmail. So I've left my Gmail there, and I've given you 2 resources. The first one, which Scott has posted in the chat box several times, I'm sure he's going to get it in another time right now, is the actual bit.ly to my presentation. So you will have access to all of my slides. You will have access to all of my different Hyperdoc templates that you are free to use. All I ask is that you make a copy of it. That way you have your own copy and you can do as you please with it. If you need a master copy, because I don't think I gave you access to a master copy, but once you make a copy, you should be able to edit it however you'd like. But let's say it doesn't let you do that and you need a master copy, just shoot me an email. I'll be happy to send you the master copy so that you can make a copy of it and use it how you'd like to with your students and how it fits them. I've also given you a second link. It's just a really cool resource on tools for Hyperdoc, on how you can engage, explore, explain, apply, share, reflect, and extend. And it gives you all of the different ways you can possibly do that, all of the mediums. So right here, you can see that you can use Google Docs to engage, Google Forms, Padlet, Google Classroom questions, Breakout EDU, Poll Everywhere, Kahoot. I'm just kind of mentioning some that might, ring a doorbell here, or even ones that I've used before. Goose Chase, quizzes. So And these are all linked, so you can go to that actual platform and see what it's all about, on how you can help your students explore, how you can let your students explain. So hopefully it's a useful resource for you so that you can see the different ways you can engage each of your students and what platforms you can use. Maybe some of them that you actually have an account to for school. I know Jen Metler in Calabasas, she has a Goose Chase account for her whole school. So she could use Goose Chase, so on and so forth. So hopefully it's helpful. I decided to add that in last minute because I was like, oh, that could be a really cool thing for them to see, so that they're like, oh, I can use this, I can use this, I can use this. Sky's the limit, right? So that is, let me just make this a little bit bigger one more time. That was my presentation on Hyperdocs and using Google Apps. I hope that you were able to come away with a nugget or two. And hopefully you are starting to, or have started, or have been reflecting on all of the things that were positive last year, all of the things that were good, that you would like to continue moving forward with this school year, because I know I put a lot of thought into that. And I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of conversations with my department and my team about what we can do this upcoming year, and what worked last year and what we want to continue doing and using. So hopefully it was kind of a spark to get you thinking about that, or to continue your thoughts on that.
Wow, Stephanie, thank you. What an awesome session. I'm probably like everybody else. I can't wait Monday morning to start playing around with all this and seeing how I can incorporate this to my existing assignments and how I could tie it into my curriculum. So thank you. This is pure gold and awesome job.